Welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name is Jenny Sanaparatna. Grab your favorite drink, get a snack, and we'll get started. Today I do have one of my favorite drinks, Coca-Cola. I buy the mini ones. I love a Coca-Cola. It's one of my faves. And I have some white cheddar popcorn. So let's get real. It is 15 years ago that my grandmother went to heaven. I cannot believe it's been that long. She was such a pivotal part of my life, and so I want to share a little bit about some of the things that she taught me. Now, I've talked about my grandmother in the past. It's been a while. It's normally around this time of the year because I'm thinking about her, and I'm thinking of the sadness sometimes of when her being gone, but I also remember the joy. This is going to sound really weird, but she had a nickname for me, and it was Tweety. And I don't know why it was Tweety. I have no idea. But she would call me her Tweety. And so she would make cakes and it would have like Tweety Bird on it. It was so funny. And so every once in a while I think of, Tweety. And I'm like, that's just an endearing part of my life. She was one of those people that when you would go to her house, she was always serving. She never sat down. At least that's what it felt like. And she was always serving and always doing things for people. And she was always serving coffee at the church after service and bringing in her bars. And I don't know until the last couple years of her life that I even ever went to her house and there weren't brownies and cupcakes. And she just always made everybody's favorites. And so I've really tried to embrace that in my own life. And always tried to have, make treats for people if I can. But one of the things a core memory of mine, you have those. My grandmother was a huge gardener. I think at one point they had 5 gardens. And not like little teeny gardens, like full, like huge gardens. They were just enormous. And I remember walking around the gardens because I always wanted to follow Grandma and Grandpa around. Like they were always out checking on the gardens, and some were flower gardens, some were vegetable gardens. Like it was all kinds of different things. And so I was out checking with her, and there was one time we came across like this little red basket, like you got at a fast food joint, with the little holes in it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, the little plastic baskets. And it was sitting next to this big tree. And I was like, Grandma, what is this basket doing here? And she's like, oh, Jenny, don't touch the basket. And I was like, okay, I won't touch the basket. And she was like, that's where the turtle laid their eggs. And so I put a basket over it because the turtle leaves the eggs there, and I protect the eggs till they hatch. And then then they go away. They crawl out of the little holes and they're hatched, and then they're fine. But I protect the eggs because all the birds and the predators like to eat them. And so I realized that the eggs were getting eaten every year. So she bought a basket to put over the top to protect the eggs. And so that was really little. Like I was probably 3 or 4, maybe 5, that I remember seeing the basket for the first time. So every time I went up, I would look for the basket. And every year, the turtle came back to the exact same spot and laid her eggs. And my grandmother would cover the basket as just a protection. Like it was just such a beautiful thought that my grandmother cared enough about the baby turtles to, 1, be looking for them, 2, be protecting them, and it was an annual thing. And I remember when the basket wasn't there anymore, and I was like, Grandma, what happened to the basket? And she's like, the turtle didn't come this year. And she's like, Jenny, that probably means that the turtle went to heaven. And whether you believe turtles go to heaven or not, that's neither here nor there. She was talking to a child. And I just remember feeling real sadness. Like, that's just really sad that the turtle's gone to heaven. And she's like, well, it's just kind of life, Jenny. You live and you love, and, then you go to heaven if you believe in Jesus. And it was just kind of like one of those, wow, Grandma, like, wow, you have wisdom moments. And my grandmother was just so good at those kind of things. She had so many hummingbird feeders outside of her window that you would sit there at lunchtime and watch, honestly, 20 to 30 plus hummingbirds sit there and drink all of the, I would call it hummingbird juice. I don't really know what it was. And my grandmother would make it on with gallons and gallons of it at a time, because I think she had 6 hummingbird feeders in the front of her house and like 3 in the back, and she would have to fill them almost every single day because there's so many hummingbirds there. And she cared about the little things, like the little animals. And it reminds me of the verse that's currently on our board in the hallway. In our hallway, we put up a verse that we're kind of thinking about, and I meditate on for that period of time that's up there. And it's been everything from even a fool is thought wise if they keep their mouth shut, to be strong and courageous, for the Lord is always with you. So it's always something different. And right now it's talking about the birds and how the birds do not toil and they do not sow, yet the Lord takes care of them. And how much more important are we that the Lord would take care of us? And I think that's so neat because my grandmother really embodied that. Like, I've talked about how she used to not only put out bread for the raccoons, but bread, butter, and jam. Like, you couldn't just put jam on them. You needed to put butter and then jam, and then you fed the raccoons. And she just cared about the smallest animals. To go out and you have 5 gardens and you have a whole you're taking care of a household, and she's taking care of a church, and like, she had a lot going on. She was a very busy lady and involved in this club, that club, and elections, and like, she was involved in so much stuff. It was kind of crazy. She even took care of her mother, who was down the road, and was there 3 to 4 times a day taking care of her. Like, she had a lot to do, but she always made sure that those turtles were protected, and that those hummingbirds were fed, and that the raccoons got their raspberry or strawberry jam, so they stayed out of her garden. I think that was really the motive there. But she also did the same with us kids. Like, we were never the least. She cared about us. She made sure that our favorite snacks were made. I remember when there was like a shortage on fruit snacks, or my parents couldn't afford fruit snacks or whatever, she made them. Like, she was like, Jenny really loves a fruit roll-up. I'm going to make fruit roll-ups. Were they as good as the regular fruit roll-ups? I gotta be honest, no, they weren't. But she cared about those little details in my life. And she really transferred that to me. She transferred that I look at the little details in people's lives. And I really want to care about whether my dog gets what he wants. And, I know he's just a dog, and I know that he's not, he doesn't have all the faculties that... I'm saying that as he's sitting next to me looking at me like, what do you mean I don't have all the faculties? Not the smartest creature ever, but I want him to be treated well. And I look at the details of small things when you're at you go to the grocery store and you think of someone and you're like, oh, wouldn't this be fun for them? And I buy a little treat for Sam, or I buy a little treat for Kevin, or for my mom, or my sister, or my brother, or my sister. I mean, like, anybody that I can think of that just kind of pop into my head, because I feel like we've lost that in our world. We've lost the ability to enjoy the small things. We have become so focused on ourselves and just kind of surviving that we've lost the ability to really enjoy those small details and those small creatures. Now, I am not feeding birds in my yard. Do not have hummingbird feeders up. I'm not here often enough, to be honest with you, to have those things. And if you're going to have them, you need to really maintain them, right? Like, that's part of it. So I don't have them. But I do know that the Lord cares about the details of our lives. And I love that. I love that the Lord loves us enough to care about the details. That if the Lord were my grandma, he'd be making me fruit snacks, right? That he'd be like, Jenny, I know you really miss these, so I'm going to make some for you. He cares about those. And we have, sometimes as we grow older, we lose the wonder. The wonder of what's under the basket and that they're eggs and that someone's protecting them and taking care of them. We lose that wonder and that awe of sitting there and watching 20 to 30 hummingbirds just sit in midair drinking a red juice of just fabulousness. And you miss that wonder. And I just wanted to come back to that in my own life. I want to enjoy the wonder of what the Lord is doing in my life. That I really want to start taking time to be grateful for the little minute things that He does. I always, and I have always, when I get a really good parking spot, I know it has nothing to do with luck. I know that the Lord's like, hey, Jen, I gave you a good parking spot. And then there's other days that I'm far, far away and I have more time to listen to my book. Because I put my book in the minute I leave the car. But I am constantly trying to remember to look at the details that God is providing. He provides in big ways, and I love that about Him. I love that He works miracles in our lives that everybody kind of sees. But there are really small details that God takes care of in our lives that sometimes we just completely ignore. And we just kind of fluff over as luck, or hey, that just happened to happen, or this is just what I'm owed. And I just wanted you to take a moment and be grateful for those small details that God has cared about, like my grandmother cared about, like she cared about those things, and that the Lord does that in our own life, that He cares about these small little details sometimes that we just don't stop and thank Him for, or even stop and acknowledge. I don't know that the Lord's like, Jenny, just, you need to check this out. But I think there's a sense of your life kind of changes when you start looking at the details. When you start looking at the ways that God has moved in the past 2 days in really small, maybe insignificant ways, but they're really not, are they? Like, you just go, wow, Lord, thank you for working that out. That was something that I was a little stressed about, that I wasn't 100% sure how that would work out. And it just did. Like, you were just like, hey, Jen, let it go. It's okay. I've got this. Because God cares. He really does. He cares about those things. He cares about, how am I going to get from point A to point B and do the 6 things I need to do in between time. And the Lord really can help you with that. And those small 6 things that need to happen in between point A and point B, He's there helping you, walking you through that. He cares about those details. He cares about your life. He cares about who you are and the things that make you up. And I'm excited about that because I saw that in my grandmother. And my grandmother really modeled that part of the Lord for me. And my prayer for you is that you start to see those small details, that you start seeing His hand moving things in your life in small ways and in big ways too. But in those small ways, really, there's something special about them. There's just something special about the love in those small details that can be life-changing. Well, that's all I have for you this week. You can find me on Real Life with Jenny on Instagram, Facebook, and Be Real. You can also find me at christconnection.cc/Jen. That's where you can schedule all of your events. If you have some women's teas or you have some women's conference or retreats that you'd like a speaker for, here I am. You can also sign up for my email, getting a weekly email there. That's just a nice reminder of the email, and you don't have to go searching for it. It just comes straight to your inbox, and then you can listen right there and be done. So it's just a nice little thing there. Well, I'm excited to see how you looking at the small details that God does in your life and seeing His love in those minute ways and in the big ways too. And we'll see what God can do through those little details. Have a great week.